Hello everyone, welcome to the session. So today we are actually going to learn about loops. Loops are part of control flow statements. In control flow, we do have three types of control flow statements. One is conditional statement. The second one is loops are known as iterative statements. And the third one is actually transfer statements. Under conditional statements, we have gone through basic if else, nested if else, if and if else. And we do have nested if as well. We can have nested if else, nested if, everything is possible. Now we are going to learn about loops. In loops, we do have for loop and while loop. Under transfer statements, we do have break, continue, and then we do have pass. Now our next topic is loops, and the first one is for loop. Let us get started with for loop. In the for loop, we do have two types of for loop. One is the basic for loop, and the second one is for else loop. We'll be using for else. So this is another type. And in other programming languages, if you are actually familiar with C, C++, Python, and all, so the else is allowed only in the conditional block. But here we can actually have a else block in the loops. In this case, it is for loop. We can also have else with the while loop too. So what is the syntax of the for loop? Syntax of for loop. The syntax of for loop is for variable in, either we can actually iterate a string or a list or a tuple, or we can actually use a set. Okay, and we can actually use a dictionary, or we can actually use any range. We can use range. In Python 2, we do have a method known as xrange. In Python 2, it is actually xrange. I'm not going to cover more about Python 2 because the go forward Python version is actually 3, Python 3.x. So Python 3.10 is the most recent one, and 3.11 it is actually available. Ideally every October. What I've seen from the history, I've seen most of the major releases are in the month of October. Okay, so now this is the month of October. I think Python 3.11 is actually ready for the testing, but official release version is actually 3.10, which was last released in October last year. So now let us do one. Let us say what is the syntax over here? For it should be in small case. This is a keyword. And variable can be anything. You can actually use counter, you can use an I, you can use any variable name. In most of the cases, you must have seen I, the variable I. Why the I is people are actually using I in Java, in C, C++, Python, Perl, everywhere. You can see Perl, they will be actually using I by default. I stands for iteration. Or let's say, for example, when we are actually iterating something, we can actually give an IT here for iteration, or I as in just iteration, for iteration in. You can specify that. So that's the reason why we are actually using I. You can use any variables over there. So now, when we are actually going to talk about this one, right now only we can iterate string, list, tuple, set, dictionary, range, and xrange. Xrange is only supported in Python 2.x. It doesn't support in Python 3.x. And then here you need to specify a colon that is part of the syntax. This is part of the syntax. If you are able to recollect, let's say for example, how the basic if else look like, if we are actually specifying a condition, then colon, then we are specifying four spaces. Let's say some print statement over here, like print hello, we can actually specify here. Then we can specify else colon, then here we can specify print statement, let's say hi. This is how we are actually specifying in the if. This colon was used like in the if as well. In the for loop also, like now when you are actually using any iterator over here, right? The iterators are actually any one of these. I'm sorry, in one of these types like tuple, set, dictionary, list, or anything. Then you have to end with a colon. Then definitely you should specify 2 spaces, 4 spaces, 3 spaces, but my preference is always 4 spaces. So here I can specify statement or statements, statement or statements. Now, if I'm writing something here, like statement here, statement 10, for example, statement 11 here, the statement 10 and statement 11 are outside the loop. Okay, like if I'm specifying statement 1 here and then specifying statement 2, then specifying statement 3. The statement 1, statement 2, and statement 3 are in the scope of the loop. Let's say for each variable, these 3 statements are actually going to be executed for each iteration basically. But statement 10 and statement 11 will be executed only once the loop is actually done. Okay, so now let us understand in depth of for loop, like when the for loop is actually going to end. For variable lane, we are having like list of values. I can say like these are like list of values. Let's say we are having 100 values over there. Then the for loop is actually going to iterate 100 times. So if you are having 3 statements over here, how many times the statements will be executed? This is like number of statement into the number of iterations. So if number of iterations is 100, then 300 statements is going to be executed, and the 300 statements are nothing but like 3 statements for iteration. So let us try to write a write a simple for loop. Okay, simple for loop. Let's say I have my string over here. My string is like message equals to hello world, hello world. Okay, now I'm just typing here 4 character in message. Message is a string, and then I'm just giving 4 spaces here. I'm just giving like a print ch. Simply I'm just typing like a print ch. That's it. Now if I'm going to run this program, let us see like now what we're going to do here. We are going to create a Python file, and I'm just giving like basic for loop Python file. And here we are actually iterating a string. We are iterating a string. If I'm running this program, Control Shift F10 to execute the program in Python. So here you can see it is actually iterating hello world. And if you want to see like let's say this is my first program, which is actually iterating the message. In this message, we are having hello world, that is 11 characters. So the loop, the statement inside the loop is actually getting executed 11 times. Let's say, for example, I want to print something. I want to print. Let me write another program. Python training, new Python file. Here I'm just giving like basic for loop 1 Python file here. Okay, so now I want to understand like what whether this loop is actually really getting executed 11 times, the iteration is happening like 11 times or less than 11 times. Let us see. Okay, I'm just specifying a hyphen over here. Okay, so if I'm running this program, here you can see it is actually it's a separator. It should be like the end, not a separator, because separator is for multiple values in the same statement, and end is for multiple lines. Control Shift F10. Here you can see it is actually giving like hello world. That means here you can see it is actually getting executed 11 times. Now, if I want to put a counter here, what I can actually specify, let's say my counter value, I'm just specifying here. Now count equals to 0. Now I'm just going to count like how many characters are actually present over here. Count equals, this is actually same as, this is known as the augmented operator. that is addition and assign. This is known as addition and assign. You can specify here or you can specify count. If you are having difficulties to understand this one, you can definitely use like count equals to count plus one, which is same. Either you can actually increment the counter like this, or you can actually increment the counter like this. But ideally, we do not use counters to count like the number of characters. There are actually different approaches available, different methods available, like not to get the count of characters using a simple method called like known as length len. I'll just tell you in some time. So now look at here. Now for character in message print character, then we are actually specifying end. End is actually line separator. So we are getting like all the messages, sorry, the message in the same line. If you want to actually differentiate, you can put a blank print statement here. It is actually by default going to print a new line. So now here, if I'm executing this program again, and I'm just giving a separator here as space, end as space. Now here you can see you can get a counter value. Now print, I'm just giving print number of characters, number of characters. Here I can specify count. Okay. If I'm executing this program, here you can see it is saying like the number of characters are actually 11. Why? Why hello world is actually getting printed here? Because we are actually specifying the end as space. If you want like a new line over here, you can definitely specify /n. What it is going to do is, it is going to print number of characters is actually 11. So it is actually basic iteration where we are actually iterating a string. Iterating a string. In each iteration, the for loop is actually reading one character from the string value. The string can be anything. In this case, we have actually hard coded, right? In this case, we have actually hard coded. But ideal in real-time scenarios, let's say, for example, you are validating a config file, and the config file, each entry should be like 100 characters. Each entry should be 100 characters in the config file. Now, how do you validate it? Definitely, you need to iterate using a for loop. You should read one line at a time. Then you can check the length of that particular line or string, and if it is matching with 100, then okay, the configuration looks fine. If it is less than 100, then the configuration doesn't look good. So now, for example, I want to actually get the length without using the for loop. How do I get it? So it is very simple to get the length. Definitely, we can use Boolean function. We really don't need a loop. Need a loop to count the number of characters. What we can actually do here is we can use alien method. We can use alien method or alien function. We call it a method or function in Python, which are same. In programming languages, you must have heard about like functions, methods, method signature, function signature, and all this stuff. Right. So similarly, here we do have like length. So now I can specify like print. Here I can say number of characters. Number of characters. Here I can specify directly length of then the object. The object could be a tuple, could be a list, could be a dictionary, could be a set, could be a string. But you cannot get a length of a number or length of a float. Okay, we cannot do that. I'll just give you another example why we cannot do it. So number of characters here, what I can actually specify is length of message. So length of message, it is going to give me the length of this message value, message variable. Like here you can see number of characters is 11. So now the question here is, the more methods, the more modules, the more packages the less number of lines of code you are actually going to write. Okay. So now consider this one. If you are not familiar with length method, then what you will do is, like, given a requirement to count the number of characters in a particular string, you'll end up writing a for loop. So this is a costly approach. Okay, so you should not use loop to count the number of characters. Then you should actually use alien method to count or get the length of the particular string in this case. Now let me write another program to get familiar with length function. Now length example, I'm just giving a Python file. Let me define various data types over here. Like now, let's say variable one, I'm just giving like 10, which is a number. Now variable two, I'm just giving here like 20.3. No, I'm just giving length. We should not use on a integer, or we should not use it on a floating point number. Let me do this one. Like length of, I'm just giving like a variable one. Now let us see what is the error message we are going to experience. Control Shift F10 to execute the program in Python. Here you can see the error message. Object of type int has no alien. That means this type of object, integer type of object, doesn't have a feature length, doesn't have a method length. We cannot actually do the operation. That's the reason I told like this is not possible. If you want to do like the same thing on variable 2, you are also going to get the message, but in this case, like you're getting int. In the other case of a variable 2, you are actually going to get the case as float. Now here you can see the type float has no length. So never ever like use length alien method for integer data type and floating data type. Okay, so now this is not allowed. So in this case, you are getting the error message that type float has no. The second one, you are getting the type float has no alien, and here you can actually get type int has no alien. So don't do this. Okay. Now, if I'm having a message, that's a message equals to hello, and we can definitely use print print length of print length of message. This is allowed. So it is going to give us as 5. So hello, you can see here as 5 characters. It is going to return us as 5. Now I have and this type is actually string. Okay, this hello is actually string type. So that's the reason we are going to get it. Now let me define a variable that is type of list. Okay, let's say I'm just giving like a list one. We'll go in details of which type, like how to define a list, how to create a list, how to add element to the list, how to remove element from a list, pop operations. There are n number of operations we are actually going to learn in the later sessions. But for now, if you want to define a list, it has to be closed in the square brackets. Okay, and the list items, if it is a number, no need to quote it. If it is string, it has to be quoted. Let me tell you like a list of numbers. There's a 10, 20, I'm just giving 30 here, then 40 here, and then 50. I'm having 5 elements over here. Now, if I do print length of list 1, it is actually going to give us the list as, the output as actually 5 here. Let's say, let me add like reduce one more, like in this case we are actually getting 5, so you can actually get it 4 here. In case of tuple, let's say tuple 1, tuples should be enclosed in parentheses or round brackets. Tuples are immutable, that is read only. You cannot change. Once it is defined, it is done. There are indirect approach. We can actually convert a tuple to a list and then modify, again convert the list to a tuple, but that is an indirect approach. But by default, tuples are immutable. So now here I'm just giving like let's say A, and I'm just giving like BB, then CC, then I'm just giving like hello here, then I'm just having like 2022, the next year is 2023, I'm just specifying here, If I'm giving like print length of tuple 1, length of tuple 1, it is actually going to give us a 6. Length of tuple 1, it is going to give us a 6. Now for now, just let us limit it like now here, and we'll actually learn about dictionaries set in our upcoming sessions. So now, if I'm going to run this program, the the first guess, it is going to give us as 5, which is a string data type. The list, it is also going to give us as 4. It is having 4 elements. And tuple, it is having like some of them are actual numbers and some of them are actual strings, and there are 6 elements. If I'm running this program, I'm just going to get 5, 4, and 6. 5, 4, and 6. So far, I have actually told you like now how to iterate a string. Now let us write a program how to iterate a tuple. To iterate a tuple, like what we can do, iterate tuple or iterate a list, what we can actually do, we can define a tuple for now. I can specify, let's say tuple 1 equals to, here I'm just giving 10, 20, Subbu, Subbu, then location, I'm just giving Bangalore, and I'm just giving my country name as an IN for item in, let's say IT in, or I can say like an ITM, item in, or you can say variable in, or anything. You can use any item, variable, element. As per your requirement, you can actually define it, okay? So now for variable in tuple 1, I have to give 4 spaces, print. Here I'm just giving variable, print variable, okay? So now, if I'm going to run this program, you can see it here, let's say, let us name it as for tuple, just giving for tuple, example, here we go. If I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing 10, 20, Subbu, Bangalore, and IN. If you want to have a number associated, let's say for example, it should say like the number 1, the element is 10, the second element is 20, the third element is Subbu, fourth element is Bangalore, fifth element is IN. We can actually do it. How do we do it? First of all, we need a counter. Let's say I'm just giving like counter equals to 1. That is our first element. Now here I'm just going to print count, or we can definitely give it as like count 0. Here we can give, just one moment, we can specify count plus equals to 1. And then here we can specify element count, that is the number 1 element or index, right? And then we can say value is then variable. That's it. If I'm running this program, here you can see element 1 value is 10, element 2 value is 20, element 3 value is Subbu, element 4 value is Bangalore, element 5 value is in. We can do this. Most of the cases, we really do not use like counters. Wherever needed, like we need actual counters, there is a function that is known as enumerate. There is a function known as enumerate. So at the basic level, if you are not familiar with enumerate, just give it up. But if you are actually writing the code in real time, definitely this is a function you should actually understand, enumerate. When we are actually doing enumerate, we need 2 things over here. Let's say, for example, I'm just giving like index and then variable. Here I'm just going to use like index, int, index. Okay. Now here you go. for multiple variables I'm using int and variable here in enumerate tuple. Enumerate tuple, what it is going to do, it is going to associate the index with each element. Then we are actually referring int and variable. If I'm going to run this program, here you can see like element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3, and element 4. So enumerate, in this case, this is actually enumeration. We are using enumeration. Enumerate will enumerate the index will start with 0. Now if you want to actually print, if you want to print let me put a print statement here, like print, I want to actually differentiate hyphen followed by 50 times. It is going to print hyphen 50 times. And so far, if I'm running this program, here you can see the difference, like, here it is enumerated. Now I want to do the same thing with a different approach. The different approach is, instead of like default 0, you want the enumeration should print like 1 to 5. How do we do it? Simply what you can do here is you can actually put a +1. That's it. So now if I do this here, like 0 plus 1 is 1, and then it is going to print like for last element will be like 5, element 5. So now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is like element 1, element up to element 5. Let us revisit this program quickly to understand what we have done here. So this is the tuple, and we can iterate the tuple items. We can iterate the tuple items using for loop. So now for variable, any variable name in tuple 1, the tuple 1 is, in this case, it is containing 10, 20, Subbu, Bangalore, and IN. Now we are actually printing the variable. In each iteration, it is going to print the variable. So it is going to print 10, 20, Subbu, Bangalore, and IN. Then the second approach, we have actually used a counter, and counter initialized to 0, and for each variable in tuple 1 we have incremented the counter, and then we have used a print statement to print the element followed by the index, that is nothing but the count here, and the value of the variable should be like first value is 10, that is going to print element 1 is 10, element 2 value is 20, element 3 value is Subbu, similarly element 5 value is IN. And we have used here we have actually used replication operator. That is, replication operator is actually asterisk mark. So it is going to print hyphen 50 times. So instead of like printing hyphen, if you're actually coming from a cell background or like in cell, we do not have such features. Whenever we need hyphen 10 times, we have to explicitly specify, unless we are actually trying it differently to a function or something. The by default print, or sorry, echo doesn't support like the replication or repetition operator. Then the fourth one, we are actually using the enumerate. In the enumerate, we are using like index, then followed by the variable. Then we are actually enumerating the tuple. In the enumeration of the tuple, we are actually getting the element, then followed by the index and the variable, and it starts with 0. But if you want to actually print from 1, then what you can actually do is you can definitely do a int plus 1. So these are the takeaways from this program. So far you are familiar with the basic for loop. You can actually iterate a string, you can iterate a tuple, you are familiar with the length function, and you are familiar with the enumerate function, and you can actually loop it through. Now let me tell you one more example where we are actually going to do the same thing using a list. We are going to do the same thing using a list. Now new Python file, here I'm just giving for list. For list, I'm just going to change this moon bracket or like the round brackets to square bracket, then this becomes a list. And instead of tuple 1, I'm just going to use a meaningful name, that is list 1. So here I can specify a list 1. I'll just extend this program at a later point of time. So let me delete it for the time being. So now here we go. So this is the program. So list 1, which is 10, 20, Subbu, Bangalore. So for variable in list 1, we are actually printing the variable. Now, if I'm going to execute, let's say for example, if I'm executing Control Shift F10 here to execute the program in Python, here you can see it is printing 10, 20, Subbu, Bangalore, and IN. So now, if your requirement is you want to actually do print the index as well along with like the element, definitely we can do that. Let's say for example your requirement is you want like an asterisk should be printed, asterisk should be printed, let's say 30 times, you can do it. And then I'm just going to use enumerate, then list one. Okay, and then here I'm just printing, I was printing like a variable, now I'm just going to print index, that is ind. This variable ind is not a keyword, it can be like any variable, it can be I, it can be C, it can be index, it can be INDX, it can be anything. So now here I've just used like INT, so I can specify here IND, that is the index, and just using a, for more readability, I'm just using like this hyphen followed by greater than symbol, it will look like arrow symbol. Now let us see. Now control shift F10. Here you can see that like the item now 0 is 10. Similarly, the item now 4 is actually IN. Now if you want this program with index should start with 1, then what you can do here is you can definitely give IND plus 1, IND plus 1 and run the program. You can see it is actually starting at 1 to 5, but in the previous case it was actually printing 0 to 4, and in this case it is actually printing only the values. So this is how you can actually iterate a list. So the syntax remains same for variable list. In the previous example, we have used for variable and tuple. In the first example, it was for variable in string. So far you are familiar with string iteration, list iteration, and tuple iteration. Now I'm just going to tell you one more example like how to iterate a dictionary. How to iterate a dictionary. Now I'm just going to tell you that uh, Python file like for dictionary, Python file over here, and just giving this, and I'm just deleting all the code over here. Now let me define a dictionary. Now dictionary one, or I can say like an order info. My order info is this is my dictionary. Here I'm just giving like name. This is kind of JSON, like if you're familiar with JSON formatting, this is just the same, Subhasis, and here I'm just giving location, I'm just giving my country name as IN, and then the product I've given here, let's say I'm just trying to order for a iPhone, and here I'm having a price. This is a key value pair. This is a key value pair and it is case sensitive. Let's say price is 15,000. I'm sure like now iPhone is not so very much costly, so not a quick. I mean, we cannot actually get an iPhone with 15K, but yeah, for now it is fine. So now here we go. So now here what I can do is I can definitely give for, let's say, item in order. It's like dictionary item I'm just getting a print. Let us see like now what it is going to give us. It's not definitely going to give us the values. It is going to give us the keys. Like name, it is going to give us name. It is going to give us like now location. It is going to give us product. It is going to give us price. Now if I'm giving like an item, it is actually going to print the keys. It will only print the keys. Okay, so now if I'm running this program, here you go, you can see it here, name, location, product and price. Now if your requirement is, okay, along with keys, you want the values as well, we can definitely do that. Let me print a dotted line over here, star into 50, and here we go. here I can specify like order of item, order of item. So don't worry guys, like I'll just cover like everything in it else, so don't worry about it. Okay, it will print the values, the value, print the value. So now in the previous one, it was actually printing the keys like name, location, product and price. In the second for loop, we are going to get the values that is Subhas's IN, iPhone and 15K. So now if I'm going to run this program, you can see it here like Subhas's IN, iPhone and 15K. Now in the third for loop, we are actually going to iterate the key and values. So now here what we can actually do here is there are n number of ways to iterate a dictionary and we'll go in details. For now, let us go ahead with the basic approach. Now here I can specify like item and then here I'm just giving like followed by the value. So it is like it will print the key and value pairs. Okay, key and value. So key and value means like names versus location, IN, product, iPhone, then price 15K. The third for loop is going to print that way. Now here we go. So it is going to print the first for loop, it was printing only keys. The second for loop was printing only values. The third for loop, it is actually printing all the key followed by the values. So there are n number of ways to like iterate a dictionary, and we are not familiar at this point like how to use the methods. There are like dictionary.values, dictionary.keys, dictionary.items. There are n number of methods available using which we can actually iterate a dictionary. But for now, in for loop, as a beginner, we can actually iterate a dictionary using these three approaches. So far, whatever things I have actually told you, I have actually told you about the for loop syntax. Then we have iterated iteration or iterative string, and then iteration of list, tuple, and dictionary. Similarly, we can actually so while causing set is set, set will go ahead with the set example too. Set, it is again, you can actually define a set using the braces, and set items are actually, set is mutable, but set items are actually immutable. So let's say, for example, set cannot actually contain a list, but set can actually contain a tuple. Set cannot contain a dictionary because we can actually change the key value pair. We can append the values to a dictionary and all these things. So that's the reason why set cannot actually contain mutable elements. Set can actually contain immutable elements. By default, set is mutable. We can add n number of elements, but set should be like containing immutable items. So string and numbers, basically floating point numbers, basically the numbers like the decimal numbers, those are actually immutable by default. Now I'm going to tell you a concept that is completely new, that is known as range. Using range, we can actually generate a range. The syntax of range is range start, stop, and step. Start, stop, and step. Stop and step are actually optional. Stop and step are optional. Optional. Let's say if I'm giving like range of 10, range is a data type and the type is class range. Similarly, we are having a type like x range in Python 2. Python 2.x, it was x range. The class x range. Now, range of 10, what it is going to generate? It is going to generate 0 to 9. 0 to 9. It is going to generate 0 to 9. Now, if I'm giving like range of 1 comma 10, it is going to generate 1 to 10, 1 to 9. If we want to generate 1 to 10, you have to give like now 1 of 1 comma 11, only then you can actually get 1 to 10. Let's say I've just given like range. I'm just given like 1 followed by 100 followed by step is 2. It is going to print 1, 3, 5 in this series. Let's say 1, 3, 5 until 99. It is going to print like till 99. Let's say, for example, I want to actually start with like this. Like then start with 10, end with 1, and then minus 1. Then this is going to print 10, 9, 8, 7, and then so on till 2. Okay, it is not going to print 1. Okay, by default. So now if I'm giving like a range followed by 10, then there is no end. I'm just giving like no minus 1. We'll see like what is going to happen here. We can actually define this way as well. Let us write programs to try with like no various types of range. Let me write a program here. New Python file for range. For range, I'm just giving here for I in range of 10. Range of 10. Here I can say like now print I and equals to I want to give a separator as space. So line separator as space. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing 0 to 9. If I want to print, let's say for example, I want to print like starting from 20 and ends with 41 and step is 2, what it is going to do, it is going to print 20, 22, 24 till 40. So now control shift F10 to run the program in Python. Here it is saying like no, there is a Y, there's a mistake here, control shift F10 here. Now here you can see 0 to 0 to 9, then 20 to 40. Why it is printing like this? Because we have given an end here. If you want to separate it, you can definitely use a print statement here, blank print statement, right? And then here you go. Here you can see like 20 to 40. Let's say I want to print a range and in the reverse order in the sense, let's say for example, I want to print it from 90 to 70 or 90 to 75 and step is 1, or I'm not giving any step. If you're not giving any step, then in this case, what it is going to do, it is not going to print anything because 90 to 75, it cannot actually continue in the reverse order. To print in the reverse order, let's say for example, 90, then 89, then 88, then 87, the step is actually -1. So you should actually specify step as -1. If I execute this, now here you can see it is actually printing. Again, we need to actually put a print statement here for better readability. Here you go, like here you can see 90, 80, 89, 88, 87 till 76. If you want like not till 75, then you can actually end with like 74. In that case, it is actually going to print till 75. Let's say I want to print, just a moment, I want to print from 10 to 1 or like now 15 to 1 with a step as -2. In this case, what it is going to do, it is going to print 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, and 3. The question here is like now, can we use only positive integers? The answer is no. You can also use negative integers as well. Let's say for example, you want to print from -1 to -10, -1 to -10 with the step as -1, like -1 is -2, and all these things are actually possible. And if you want to actually put a print statement here for better readability, you can actually do that. Now here you can see -1 to -9. If you want like not till -10, definitely you should actually give -11 here, -1 to -10, because end, this end is not inclusive. It is actually, it is not going to, let's for example 15 to 1, it is going to, it is not going to consider 1. Let's say 1 to 10, it is going to consider only 1 to 9, not 10. -1 to -11, it is like -1 to -10. Let's say I want to print all the even numbers between, I want to print all the even numbers between like 1 to 100. 1 to 100, what I can actually do here is I can specify 1 to 100. 1 to 100 means 100, 0, 1. I'm just going to give an even number, so it should be like let's say it should be like 2. Basically, it should start with 2. 2 200 0 1. So what it is going to do is it is going to print all the even numbers basically. So now here you go. So you can see it like 2 to the last number is actually 100 over here. So this is all even numbers. If you want like all odd numbers, then what we can actually do here is you can definitely execute, let's say 1 to 100, 1 to 100 with 2. So it is going to print 1, 3, 5, and this result will be printed. Now, if I'm running this program, here we can see, we can, for better readability, we can actually give the print statement here. 10. Here you can see it is actually printing 1, 3, 5, 7, and up to 99. So this is the use case of range. This is the use case of range. Let's say, for example, I have a string. I have a string, something like this, like a message equals to world is open source. World is open source. Okay. Now, what I want is I want to print every alternate characters. Let's say, for example, in this case, world is open source is there, right? World is open source. Now, this index, guys, remember, like whenever we are actually dealing with any string, tuple, list, and basically like in a list at this moment, just these three are actually enough. So what it is going to do is it is actually going to have an index is 0 is actually w, then 1 is actually o, then index 2, then index 3, and index 4, and then index 5 is space, index 6 is I, index 7, index 8, index 9, then this is actually index 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. So world is open source is actually 19 characters. So it is actually going to start with like, I think world is open source is actually 20 characters. Let me check the length. Okay, alien of message. So we are going to deal with the index right now. New Python file for index. Okay, so if I'm running this program, we are going to get, I need to print it, otherwise it is not going to print anything on the screen. But if you're actually using Python console, you can actually do that. Control set of 10. Here you can see 20. Let's say I mentioned about like Python console. Okay, let us learn like how to use Python console in PyCharm. In the other IDEs, we do have actually Python console too. So if you're actually using Python console, just click here Python console. Now it is actually going to give us Python console here. Now I can actually copy paste. Okay, and here we go. Then I can specify length of message. It is actually printing 20. But if you want like inside Python program you want to do this, you cannot do it. Like you have to use an explicit print statement. Otherwise, it is not going to give us the output. Okay, let's say in Python console, I'm just giving like 12 plus 23 minus 90, it is actually going to give 55. But if you do this inside this program directly, you cannot actually get the result. You need an explicit print statement. Now, here it is saying here it is saying that 20 is the character. Now, what is my requirement? The index starts with 0 and index ends with 19. Okay, index starts with 0, index ends with 19. Now, what I want to do, what I want to do is I want to print every alternate character. So now here I can specify alien of message. Okay, so now here I can use, let's say, for index in, or I can simply use like now for I in, I stands for index or iteration, index in. Here I'm just giving the range of here I can say length, range of length. I'll just explain. Okay, so don't worry about it. Let's print message of I, print message of I. In the previous example, I told you like now for character in, you can directly give the string and refer the character. Now here I'm just telling like now, let us retrieve the characters using the index. Why we are actually using index? Because our requirement is every alternate character we are actually going to print. In that case, we should know like how to retrieve using the index. So now in this case, I just used like now for I in range of length. So length is 20, so it should start with 0 till 19. Now print message of I. What it is going to do? Let's say like now I'm having end here. I can specify end is actual space. Now, if I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing world is open source as is. Now the question here is, do we really a temporary variable? The answer is no. The answer is no. So instead of using the variable, like using a length function to get the length, assigning to a variable, then passing the variable to range, what we can actually do is we can directly go ahead, use the length function here. We can directly use the length function here. I'm just going to make it a little complex, like step by step we should go so to understand like how to write it. So initially we are actually using a variable. Now I have just given like the length function. We are familiar with range, we are familiar with length. I'm using a length inside range. Now what it is going to do here is it is going to print the world is open source. Now I'm not going to disturb this block. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to print here like now the length here, and then followed by I'm just going to tell the program that start with 0 till length of the message. But what you should do is you should, let's say for example, first one is 0, I need 2, then followed by 4. So the steps should be 2 here. In this case, it is going to print WRDI like this. Okay. So now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is for better readability. I'm just giving a asterisk mark here and printing like printing the asterisk mark 50 times. Now here we go. Now see it here. So now we need to give a print statement here too to give a new line. Now control shift of 10. Here you go. World is open source. Now here you can see WRDIPNSUC. We are writing like every alternate characters. Now if your requirement is now I want the character number 1 followed by the character number 4, then how do we do it? The answer is straightforward. What you can actually do here is the requirement is you want the first character followed by the fourth character. Let's say in this case, the first character index is 0. The fourth character index is 3. That is like it should be step should be 3 in this case. If you're giving like now the step is 3, it is going to print like this way. Here you go. So it is actually printing the characters like one character at a time, like W, then L, then I, because the step is 3. Now, if your requirement is you want to print in the reverse order, Let me go back here. So I have mentioned like it should start with 0 and end with 19 here, right? The last character is 19. Now, there is an indexing known as like that is we can actually do the indexing in the reverse order. The last index is -1, last bit 1 is -2, last bit 3 is -3, then last bit 4 is -4, like this. Let's say world is open source. If your requirement is starting from -1, you want to actually print till the length of the string. Like how do we do it? Let me do it here, okay? Let me write another program. This program is getting bigger, so let me write it another program. New Python file. Here we go. For negative index. So this is a positive index, and it is going to print world is open source. The negative index, how do we do it? We should start with -1, and then we should go till length of -1. I think it should be -19 or -20 it should be. So we should give -1 length plus 1, then -1. If we do this, then it should be actually printing in the reverse order. Okay. Now print, if I'm giving, you can see the difference here. So the first print is actually printing world is open source. It is printing here like C, E, R, and all these things. Okay. So now if I'm giving like now it should be -20, it should be -1 actually. Okay. -20, because -20 only then you can actually print till -19. So E, C, R, U, O, S, then it is just that like no opposite of open, NEPO, then is here, that is SI here, and this is world in the reverse order. Okay. So now whenever you need something in the reverse order, this is the solution. Now the question is, should I remember all these things? The answer is no. In the string function, I'm just going to tell you in details like how do you do it. Now for now, I'm just giving like the reverse of message. It is just the same. But say if I'm running the program, here you can see, and one moment. Print message dot reverse. I think it should not actually work. I'll just tell you the list items and all. So for now, just forget about it. I'll just cover in details like in the string comparison. I'm just going to tell you that. So don't worry about it. Okay. So we can actually definitely reverse a string. There are like better ways also. Like now we can actually use slicing operators and all. So slicing operators, I'm just going to tell you in the string section. So for now, just focus here. Like now, how do we deal with the positive index versus the negative index? So this is like no type of for loop. Let's say for example, you have a list of items. Okay, you are having a list of items. Let's say for example this list. Okay, for example this list I am having, and in this list what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a reverse of this particular list. Now new Python file. Now for reverse index of list. I'll just show you one example. You can actually write in the same way for the tuple. You can write in the same way for dictionary. It is like a little different. So you may not able to do it using for loop. So don't worry about it. In dictionary section, we'll actually see like how to reverse the dictionary keys and I mean print the dictionary in the reverse order and then those kind of operations in the dictionary section. I'm just going to tell you that. Now for item in list, if I'm giving like no print, here I'm just giving print item, then end equals to space. Here we go. Here you can see item in list one. Okay, here we go. So this is like no without using the index. With index, how do we do it? With index, you can do this way. This is a preferable way, and we really don't need actually index to iterate a list. Okay, but just in case you want to iterate using index, this is the solution. A range of length of list one, and then here I can say that's I as an index. Here I can say list one of I, list one of I. Now for greater readability, I'm just giving a print here. It does the same thing. This is positive index, like iterate using the positive index. To iterate using a negative index in the reverse order, how do we do it? Okay, in the reverse order, how do we do it? Here we can actually specify the -1 as in the last index, minus of length -1, -1, then step is -1. And in this case, it is going to print in Bangalore Subbu 2010. In Bangalore Subbu 2010. So this is like not the reverse order of the list. Similarly, if you want actually reverse order of tuple, only thing what you need to do is change the square bracket to the round bracket. That's it. Remaining things, it is same. And like now use a meaningful name instead of list one, you can use a tuple one or like an example tuple or anything as per your requirement. That's it. But the concept remains same. So whenever you need to iterate a list, you really don't need an index. But whenever the requirement is actually to iterate in the reverse order or like in every alternate items in the list, in those cases definitely we need an index. So that's the reason why I covered about like the range, length, positive index traversal, negative index traversal, and then as well as like not traversing the for loop. So these are the topics for today.